I don't know about you guys, but I love a road trip. And today my wife and I are going on a road trip. We are going to Leesburg, Virginia for a friend's son's wedding. I don't go to weddings very often unless I'm working at them, so that's kind of a neat thing as well. It's kind of a part of the country we haven't really been to very much. I've been through Washington, D.C. area, which we're going to be really close to that. But I haven't spent a lot of time there, not especially like in Leesburg, so I'm excited to see that little town, to see the wedding, and then we're going to spend a day in Washington, D.C. But it's a road trip, and like I said, I love road trips. And it's also an excellent opportunity for me to take one of my favorite cameras of all time and see how good of a travel camera it is. If you watch this channel at all, you know I love the x100V. I've talked about it being a fabulous wedding camera, a stock camera, a take everywhere you go camera. Today we're going to see how good it is as a travel camera. I have the feeling I know how well it's going to do, but this is all I'm taking. Well, I'm going to take that. I'm going to take my little mini Lume Cube light, so I have some light. I'm going to take an extra battery, a couple extra memory cards, and I'm going to take my tripod just in case I need my tripod. But I'm not taking any other photo gear. That's it. Simple, easy. Let's go. Thanks, Joe. So we are now traveling on I-40. We're in the middle of North Carolina, someplace on our way to Greensboro, and I think we shoot off from there, and I'm waiting for my wife to come out of the restroom. But yeah, this is a first pit stop, if you will. Beautiful day to travel. So stop number one for us guys is at a picnic get-together for the wedding family, and this is their family farm. I think they said the house was built in 1806, I think, 1806. The guy that originally built it was a Revolutionary War general in the Virginia area, I guess. So very historic, and here's the old barn, and I'll kind of spin around. They grow hops out there, and super historic, but we're stopped for this little picnic, and of course, lots of photo opportunities. And the nice thing about the X100, you know, nobody's looking at me like, what is that guy doing with the big camera? And I'm able to walk around and take some neat pictures and do some different things. Let me kind of show you, this is quite a view. Wow, the hills of Virginia. That's the Blue Ridge Mountains still, they told me. So the nice thing about the X100 as a travel camera at this point is I'm at a family function and nobody is looking at me like I'm some kind of crazy photographer. So that's stop number one. We still got to drive to the DC area to get to our hotel tonight, so we'll be leaving here pretty soon so that we're not there too late. But day one, super successful. Looking forward to tomorrow. Okay, so it is the second day. We are heading out to the wedding, which is the whole reason we're on this little road trip. We're actually not photographing a wedding, we're actually guests of a wedding, so that'll be kind of fun. And so we're off to Leesburg, Virginia. It's a beautiful day, and we'll definitely be taking advantage of the photo opportunities there. More about that later, but we're off to a wedding, right, dear?
Right.
All right.
Friends and family, it is my honor and my joy to present to you for the first time as husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Connor and Paige Kinsey.
Good morning, guys. It's day 3. The wedding yesterday went fantastic. It was beautiful. It was kind of weird being at a wedding when I wasn't working the wedding. Felt like I kept needing to chase the bride around for all the events, but my wife and I had a great time, got to dance a little bit, and I did take the opportunity to take a bunch of pictures. So I took pretty pictures because they were family friends, so some of that was neat. But I have to say, when it comes I am in downtown Leesburg sitting in front of the courthouse, and I think that must be 10 o'clock. I didn't count how many bongs that was, but I think it's 10. But I have to say, when it comes to travel photography, for me, if you know my channel at all, I always turn everything into some stock photography. So when I'm traveling around, I'm also trying very hard to take stock photography. And I did that at the wedding yesterday, as well as just took some pretty pictures of family and the dancing and stuff. And as you can see, we're in historic Leesburg. There's statues, there's columns and courthouses and all kinds of neat stuff. So today we'll be walking around the town, probably doing a little shopping, and just as far as travel photography, whatever comes up, we'll be taking it, as far as pretty pictures, but also stock. I'm always, you know me, I'm always looking for stock sales and trying to justify all the photography. So that's it for now, I guess. Today is basically just a day with my wife and enjoying. We're gonna also go down to Washington, DC and be on the mall, and lots of stock opportunities there. But yeah, beautiful weather, can't complain. Perfect trip so far. It is the morning of day 4 of our little road trip. We are now heading south to get back home today. And we are at a rest stop in the middle of the Shenandoah Valley, which is a beautiful drive. As you can probably hear, there's a lot of highway traffic behind me. Yesterday was crazy. I think my wife said we walked 9.6 miles. Part of that was in Leesburg. A lot of it was at the mall and around all the monuments in Washington, DC. Not exactly sure how many photographs I took, but it was a lot. But it was gorgeous. It was an absolutely beautiful day. We wore ourselves out, but well worth it. I think I got a lot of stock photographs, definitely a lot of pretty travel pictures, and I'll talk more about the travel end of things and the travel photography, especially with the X100, when I get back to the studio. But just wanted to give a quick little update about where we're at. Today is a drive day. Supposed to be home about 5 o'clock, I think. But it's overcast. First day it's been overcast, and that's perfect for traveling. As long as it's not too rainy, it's perfect for being in the car that long. But overall, it's been a phenomenal trip. As far as travel photography is concerned, if you've ever done any kind of photography as you travel, you know that the people that you're with, you know, need to be patient with you, because you're going to stop and take a little bit of time. If you set your camera up on a tripod, or if you wait for the light to get just right, the people that you're with can get a little anxious and say, come on, let's get going. My wife is fantastic at being patient with me and letting me take my time to get the shot that I want, and, you know, wait for people to move out of my way or whatever. And she'll just kind of wander on down. And, you know, yesterday she was reading the next plaque or looking at the next monument, waiting for me to catch up, and she's fantastic about that. So she's a wonderful travel companion when it comes to the photography end of things, because there's been times when family will be like, you know, come on Todd, let's get moving, and, you know, you miss the shot because everybody wants to keep going. So kudos to my wife. She's awesome when it comes to that kind of stuff, and we had a really good time yesterday. So more driving, more traveling, but we'll be home today, and it's always nice to get back home. Just like that, we're back home. Well, actually we've been home for almost 2 weeks, which has given me plenty of time to go through the images, see what I got, process them, and I've got a lot of shots from this little 4-day road trip that we took. 4 days, 3 nights, that's how long we were gone. Virginia, Washington, D.C. And in fact, if you watch my last video, which I'll try to link to, I actually did my little point of view Washington, D.C. Video that I wanted to do second. I actually did that before I did this one. So that one's already up. Go watch it if you haven't. Let me know what you think. Would greatly appreciate it. Okay, so we need to talk a little bit about travel photography, and because this video is about the x100V as a travel camera, you know, let's talk about that. You know, if you watch this channel at all, you know I love this camera. This camera is fantastic. I've talked about it for weddings. I've talked about it for, you know, stock photography, take everywhere you go. You know, now I'm using it as a travel camera, and I have to say, and you know what I'm going to say, I love this camera. It's fantastic. One of the greatest things about this camera is just the simple size. It's small. It was easy to take everywhere I went. It didn't draw any attention. I was able to take the small camera but yet get big files and beautiful images and go anywhere I wanted to without the burden of the weight and the clunkiness of it. It was just a great camera to take for this type of a trip, which was basically just day tripping for the 4 days in a row. Now let me say again what I did take on this trip. I took the x100V, I took a small mini, what is it, a Lume Cube Mini, so I had a little bit of a light, and I also took my tripod, which I think I told you at the beginning of the video, but I never used my tripod. It stayed in the trunk of the car the entire time. It was nice to know that I had it, but the one clunky thing that would have been heavy to carry around, I didn't even use it. So if you're a travel photographer and you use the tripod a lot because you're shooting in the evenings or late at night when it's starting to get dark, or you like long exposures, you know, you're shooting water because you're doing that kind of travel, hiking, waterfalls, the beach, whatever. Maybe you need that tripod. Like I said, I did take it. In this case, I just never used it. Now I do have to say, as far as the fact that the camera was small, when I shot in Washington, D.C., my wife and I walked about 9.5 miles that day, and the way I had it, because I was creating the YouTube video as well, I had my iPhone attached to this little gizmo that will go onto the hot shoe, and so what I did is I went around, take my photo, but I was also videotaping that same basic image. So I was doing the point of view, and then I would show the image that I took. So that made it a little more clunky, but even walking around like this for 9.5 miles, it wasn't a burden as far as weight. It wasn't heavy at all, no problems. Now I do have to say this, when I bought this camera, I immediately put this little wrist strap on it. So when I shoot with my X100, what I do is I put my wrist through it like this, I walk around, take my photographs, and if for any reason I were to drop it, it's just going to be hanging on my wrist. I'm not, you know, in danger of dropping it to the floor. It works fantastic. I love the wrist strap. However, for a day trip like we were doing, when we were out and about that entire time, you know, the bulk of the day, the fact that I've got my wrist connected to the camera the entire time, it means that I really don't have use of this hand the way I would like to. So I think if I do the day tripping thing again like that, where I'm going to be out for a long period of time, I think I'm going to take this wrist strap off, put the neck strap on, and hang it around, you know, so it's hanging like this, and I can let go and have my hands free. I don't usually like to do that, but I think one of the biggest reasons I don't like to do that is because most of the time my cameras are much heavier and you got this big lens and it's weighing down. There's not a lot of weight to this, so hanging around my neck I think would work with a camera like this. Now I do have to say one thing about the X100V, and I know it's kind of the big pink elephant in the room that everybody's going to say, you know, it's not the perfect camera because you've only got one lens. You've got a 23mm lens, which is kind of a mid-range wide-angle lens on an APS-C size sensor. And it's true, that's probably the one drawback for a travel camera, but I will tell you, in the time that I was gone, the 4 days that I was gone shooting, there were probably 2 instances where I wish I would have had a different lens than what I had. And I'll show you. Right here was a time when I wish I had a longer lens. We were just down from the Lincoln Memorial looking back towards the Washington Monument and the Capitol, and I wished I would have had a longer lens and I could have compressed that image. You know, the reflecting pool was all right there. It would have made a very nice composition had I had a longer lens, but I didn't. So, you know, in that case, I just took what I had and ran with it. The other instance where I wish I would have had a different lens, I wish I'd have had a wider angle lens. and that was in the back of the Jefferson Memorial. There are some great columns back there, and the light that was coming through there was fantastic. I will show you right here. Here's the image I did in one frame. It's a nice looking image, but in order to get a wider angle view, what I did was I took 3 images and then stitched them together in Photoshop, and I came up with this. So in this case, not having a wider angle lens was not really a problem. I was able to just stitch 3 images together and end up with the composition and the view that I wanted. So in this little trip, there were 2 times I wish I'd had a different lens. One time there was a simple workaround. The other time was, it just was what it was. I took what I could get and kind of missed the longer lens, you know, compressed look of that particular shot. But I will tell you that in the small percentage of times I wish I could have done something different, they don't even come close to outweighing the amount of times that I was totally happy with the 23mm lens and completely thrilled that I was not carrying a bunch of big, bulky, heavy gear. Because like I said, 9.5 miles walking around the mall in Washington, D.C., you know, it was warm, it was getting hot, and, you know, it was tiresome, but it wasn't tiresome because I was carrying a bunch of bulky equipment. A couple little side notes just to talk about travel photography in general, not necessarily with any specific camera, but when you do a day trip like I just did, where you are in a certain location at a certain time of day, and that's just the way it is. You just happen to be there at that time. You've got to deal with a couple of things, and number one is the lighting. And if you haven't heard me say this before, I'll say it again now, but the thing that separates the big photographers from the medium photographers or the good from the great is lighting. Lighting is key. And if you're doing a day trip and, you know, the lighting is horrible, then the lighting is horrible. I'll give you one example. When I first got to Washington, D.C., the very first monument we came up on was the Washington Monument, and they had put out all these floral arrangements in the grass and lined them up in rows. It was really neat to show those in the foreground of the image and then the monument coming out from behind. But if you notice in this shot, the sun is kind of behind, and the 2 sides of the Washington Monument that I'm showing are both in shadow, so there's not a lot of shape or dimension to it. The lighting was just not great at that time. So the simple way around that would be to wait there until the sun got in the right part of the sky, or maybe come back the next day at the right time of day to where the sun is in the right place. But I didn't have that option in this case. We were there for that one day and that was it. So what I did was went around to another side of the Washington Monument where I had sun on one side, shadow on the other side, created some dimension and shape in that building. I didn't get the flowers in the foreground, but that's okay. I would rather have good lighting. I took both shots, but you know, to get some good lighting, I went to another side and got a different view and created some depth and dimension from there. The other thing you got to do is deal with a lot of people, and if you watch my Washington, D.C. video, you'll see there were a lot of people around, and that's just kind of the way it is. You got to wait your turn, or you got to, you know, pick angles where you minimize the people, or maybe if you're doing stock photography, you're going to send them through as editorial because you're showing people, and sometimes showing people is a good thing because it gives some perspective to how big the monuments are, or the fact that it's a travel destination for a lot of tourists. So people is something you got to deal with, and crowd control and all that. But my experience and my suggestion is just to flow with it. The people are there, they're part of it, and you're just going to have to deal with it. All right, guys, that's about it for now. I hope that helps a little bit. And if you got questions, please ask. I love to hear your comments. I love to answer your questions. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would appreciate it if you do that and give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Like I say at the end of a lot of videos, if you give me a thumbs down, let me know why. Can't make changes if I don't know what you're thinking. Big shout out to my wife, who is awesome when it comes to travel photography. She is patient with me and amazingly supportive, and she's a great travel companion. Lets me do the things that I need to do to get the photos I want, and I've got a ton of stock photography to go through now. I've done the processing, but now I got a keyword and I got to upload and do all that. So I've got a couple of weeks worth of work to do in that regard. But thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you in the next video very soon. Have a great weekend. And now we're back home. Well, actually we've been back for 2 weeks, which has given me plenty of time to go through the images, process them, look through them, see what I've got. And my light is going. It's getting dark.